This is moral courage in jury nullification, an individual multimedia presentation by Yuxtao. First, we have to explore what is jury nullification. Jury nullification is the knowing and deliberate rejection of evidence or refusal to apply the law, either because the jury wants to send a message about a larger social issue or address a structural problem that is bigger than the case itself. And in doing so, the jury's sense of justice, morality, and fairness is triggered between the victim and the convict in determination of a legal prosecutor. However, it goes deeper than this, and as John Adams wrote, representative government and trial by jury are the heart and lungs of liberty. Without them, we have no fortification against being ridden like horses, fleeced like sheep, and fed and clothed like swine and hogs. However, jury nullification can serve as an avenue for those convicted of crimes, yet the laws themselves are unjust. This provides jurors with more than just the two traditional options of either being guilty or not guilty, and rather address an overall structural problem that they want to strive to change. The problem strikes on with the fact of unjust laws and legislation. Past examples being slavery and African American oppression, where in specificity, the Fugitive Slave Act, where it required white citizens in freed states to return fugitive or runaway slaves to their owners in shackles. This was extremely discriminatory and triggered abolitionist sentiment in the North, where jurors often acquitted slaves who were fugitives and those aiding the slaves themselves. Not only this, but this can also be seen in the civil rights movement, or specifically the Jim Crow laws in the era, where African Americans were often unfairly convicted for highly segregated, where the laws were considered separate but not equal, where the African Americans received highly less discriminatory practices and were convicted of crimes that were highly segregated. Furthermore, fair jurors often exercise the practice of jury nullification in a biased and predetermined society, where these African Americans were convicted yet acquitted even though they had, quote, allegedly committed the crime. In doing so, they were provided with another avenue to acquit these convictions and override a biased society to cause structural change and societal reform in totality. Yet, we can see this, the jury nullification necessitates moral courage. The reason is because a critical application of moral courage is necessary, because they must know when to disobey, and this can be thought of as intelligent disobedience. As explained, jurors are often faced with ethical dilemmas where they're challenged to make a moral decision on whether the convicted is guilty or not guilty. Yet, they must dive deeper than that and look at the problem from not just face value, but understand whether the law itself was fundamentally biased against a specific individual. Overcoming this will result in, however, this may also cause there to be backlash from legal authority, a scarcity from the judge, and other backlash from the peers. To overcome this, we must increase political dissent and intelligent disobedience, which is crucial for civic resistance. As explained in the article by Ted Thomas and Ira Shillette, Intelligent Disobedience, that organizational and operational pressures can sometimes cause values of peoples to become blurred, and that this involves the ability to work inside of an organization, but also maintain ethical justice and uphold these moral standards. In doing so, when individuals partake in a jury, they can partake in the fact of working inside of an organization, yet upholding morality and ethicality. We can see this through the example of the John Zenger during the British colonial era. John Zenger was a writer and journalist who wrote an article that was, quote, criticizing a seditious libel against the colonial governor of New York. He was immediately arrested and put on trial, whereas the colonial judge's firm instruction to the jurors was to decide whether he had written the article or had not written the article. Yet, the jurors stepped into a deeper situation, where they acquitted Zenger in a bold act of jury nullification. They did this because they felt that Zenger was simply applying his right of freedom of speech, and in doing so, he had committed nothing that was unjust, yet it was deeply written in a constitutional value. We can see this, that the jury felt that their morality and justice was for John Zenger. But transitioning to a more common era, we can almost see this portrayed with the Boston Five during the Vietnam War. The Boston Five include activists such as Dr. Benjamin Spock and Reverend William Sloan, including Chick Coffin Jr. What they were activists for against the Vietnam War, yet they were charged with a, quote, conspiracy to aid the abet draft invasion, whereas they were just causing activism to end the war and going against government action in Vietnam. The trial of the Boston Five became a rallying point for anti-war movement, as when they were arrested, the protesters began to stage outside of the court itself. The jury acquitted all 5 of the defendants, reflecting opposition to Vietnam War and the government's persecution of dissenters. We can see that the Boston Five equipped political dissent and intelligent disobedience in overcoming the persecution of dissenters, and they were simply applying their freedom of speech. Finally, coming back to today's topic, jury nullification is the solution. First, because it increases civil disobedience, which promotes a spurring of change of societal and institutional structural problems that are plaguing society. That's the Cato Institute, which also states that it breaks societal norms and injustices. Whereas many jurors face these ethical dilemmas and may be challenged with backlash from peers, they can overcome these to challenge the laws themselves and create a more just legislation which is currently lacking. In challenging these laws, they can uphold a democracy, which is key, as political dissent and written by John Adams, that it prevents us in the hearts and lungs of liberty, which increase beneficiary and create a net benefit for the entirety of society. Thank you.